Welcome to the OnlyFans Secrets Marketing Podcast. The goal of this podcast is to help both new and established OnlyFans creators learn the basics of online branding, marketing, and promotion to help you make more money with your content and maximize your time online. My name is Richard Lewis, and I have over 20 years of internet marketing experience. So let's get started with today's topic. And that topic is OnlyFans Secure the Bag Icons, Coco Chanel. So once again this week, I am going to highlight an individual whose knowledge and inspiration can help you secure your bag for the long term. This week, we are going to talk about Coco Chanel, the innovative French designer who redefined women's fashion in the 20th century. Okay, so who is Coco Chanel and why should you care about her? All right, so she is a French fashion designer, businesswoman, and innovator. She was born Gabrielle Chanel in Saumur, France in 1883. She is one of 6 children and was born in a poor house in France. So she went from a seamstress to owning the most influential fashion house in the world. No means. And her father was a homeless street vendor. So obviously she came from a very humble beginning. Her last name was misspelled on her birth certificate as Chanel. And it was never changed her entire life because she did not want to, and a cabaret singer. But she was not the world's best singer, but she continued to perform. And her name of Coco comes from a song she sang called Who Has Seen Coco? And at that point, he spoiled her with the rich life in Paris. And so she, for about 2 years, got the taste of, expensive things. And then she met a friend of the textile heir who was named Edward Boy Capel. And he sort of stole her away from the first gentleman. Put her up in an apartment in Paris and financed her first shops. Now, her entire life really is very interesting, and obviously this is a marketing podcast, so we won't go into it. But her series of rendezvous and romances are pretty epic, and I won't go through them all. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, there is a lot more that I'm not covering here. But she started her fashion boutique in France. A corset silhouette was very popular. And what she popularized was the casual chic style, which casual, non-dressy, clothing. So it was very different than the previous period, where everything was, a lot of material. So she was successful at that. And then, World War II hit, and there's a lot to be said about her during World War II. Again, we won't go into it. But then, after the war, with Chanel number 5, which is a very popular product, and she became a very iconic brand. So even at the end of her life, she was still looking to innovate and come out with new things. And it's interesting that she was more popular in the United States than necessarily in France at the time when she came back out with everything. So at that point, I guess they had felt like things were moving along. And it's interesting, while she was gaining success, then men sort of took over as fashion icons. So she was one of the last female, really successful female fashion entrepreneurs. And then the fashion houses sort of started becoming male, which is interesting. Okay, so what can we learn there? So much like some of our previous icons, we have someone who definitely came from humble beginnings, someone who had to pull themselves up and went through different trials. Now, she did not marry, and that's interesting, through her entire life. But we see the same pattern, that she was able to go to someone else, whatever you want to call her, gentlemen callers, men that were spoiling her, almost as if she's one of the first sugar babies. If she was around now, that's kind of how people might refer to what she was up to. But she was able to utilize these, where if this was a man, then he might have been able to just go to the bank and get a loan. But she definitely didn't have a problem with that. There's many quotes that she has made that, she understood that these men were vying for her attention, to see who could spoil her the most. And so she was able to take that and move forward with her ideas. Certainly, she started with hats. I didn't mention that, but she started with hats as far as designing them, and then kind of moved on to other fashion items. And what we think of now as a fashion house really didn't fully exist. From my research, is basically saying that what she started was what one could consider one of the first fashion houses, which was just a building where she was able to put her material out there of what she was able to create herself. So we definitely do get a kind of a bit of oppression, in a society that not necessarily is pushing women forward to succeed. So we definitely can get a lot from that. And then some of her most famous quotes. Okay, so she said a lot of things, and she has a lot of female empowerment quotes that you might have seen in memes. But I'm going to stick to more of her business-minded quotes. So she stated that in order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different. So that's a very good quote from a marketing and a promotion standpoint for OnlyFans. I've definitely stressed in the podcast previously that, if you look like everyone else, if you do what everyone else is doing, if you're just, you're going to succeed. And that's what she's saying here is that in order to be irreplaceable, one must be different. You must stand out. You must be offering something that isn't just, a replication of what's already out there. And she obviously, looked at, the fashion that existed, and instead of saying, okay, I can create a little bit better version of, a corset or corset designs, she looked out and said, okay, well, what can I do that is completely different and, will, move the needle? So she definitely was looking at things from a brand new perspective. And with that perspective, you're going to be able to succeed a lot more. Now, of course, there's a lot of risk to that. If you take something that's already established and you just change it a little bit, you're likely to get, some improvement. But I guess it's a risk reward kind of system, because if you risk greatly, you get great rewards. If you risk small, you get small rewards. So for her, she risked greatly and was able to get bigger rewards. And in the end, she was named one of the 100 most influential people of the 20th century by Time magazine. So I would say that's pretty good. There were a lot of people who lived in the 20th century. And so just by her being able to look out and say, what can I do that's different? she was able to succeed. All right, so another quote from her is, don't spend time beating on a wall hoping to transform it into a door. I love this quote by her. It says a lot. Again, that's, don't spend time beating on a wall hoping to transform it into a door. This can be applicable to so many different things. And certainly in the podcast, I've talked about, if you are doing something, if you're marketing something and it's not working out for you, move on to the next thing. If you're on a social channel that's not working out for you, move to the next social channel. I'm a big believer in not doubling down on sunk cost, meaning that if you spent 30 hours on something and it's not working, you don't spend 30 more hours just because you spent the first 30 hours. If you spend thousands of dollars on something, you don't just spend thousands more because, you're hoping it's going to change. So, what she's saying here is, if you're working on something and it's not going the way that you want it to, it's not going to lead you anywhere. You're not going, it's like the door is, you open it up and then you get to move on. And she's saying it's a wall. So, it's good to take that kind of, idea into your head and move on. And especially in this age where things are moving so rapidly, especially with marketing and promotion, you don't want to spend too much time on something that's pointless. All right. This one I like, a quote from her. So she said, the best color in the whole world is the one that looks good on you. Now, this is a bit of a fashion quote, but I also see it as a good business quote for OnlyFans creators. Basically, what she's saying here is that, you don't need to, dress up in every color, do every single thing on your OnlyFans. Like, if what you're doing is working for you, do more of it. Like, you don't have to touch on every single niche and every single aspect out there. If what you're doing fits your body type, if it fits your look, if it fits who you are and feel like you are, just double down on it and, keep going with it and do your best to, mix it up a little bit. But, if that, basically she's saying that